Welcome to Business Remix. I'm Guy Adami. That's Tim Seymour. You know Tim Seymour from Fast Money. Hopefully you know me from that as well. But we're going to start out tonight with a bunch of different things, Tim. We're going to take a look at the perfect portfolio, and we're going to do it with some really interesting things. We're going to look at Tim's Vinyl Vault.
It's about time.
But first, it's the holiday season.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to talk about. So that's going to be our remix tonight, talking about all the things holiday.
There's a lot to remix, and if you think about this holiday season, you know, Black Friday is come and gone. By the way, I don't know when the holiday season starts or ends anymore, but they tell us that this is actually a shorter holiday season because we had a late Thanksgiving. By the way, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
I did. You know, it's interesting. When Black Friday comes, it's a little, if you know what I'm talking about, a little Steely Dan for you.
I like what you did there.
And there's a story behind Steely Dan that we probably won't get into.
It's a bit X-rated.
Listen, we all love the holiday season. Did you have a favorite holiday gift?
Well, you know, look, you can often be disappointed, too.
Yes.
You grew up in a big family, you come down Christmas morning, and you look to see whose stack is bigger. By the way, sometimes the big present means you get less presents. And I'm trying to think about back to those days. I mean, the days of the first Air Jordans where you had the little hand pump that went into the back and you kind of keyed it up, that was special. I think the gift that might have been the most disappointing gift was a pogo stick. Because it was in a big box and it looked like it was going to be something fun, and you're making a face.
Well, nobody got a pogo stick as a kid. If you could pogo stick, it means you probably weren't good at anything else. Like you had a lot of time to learn how to do the pogo stick.
I think this is what we're talking about. Look, I think it's actually already started out to be a pretty strong holiday season. This is what they tell us. There's a lot of dynamics to that. The markets are all-time highs. Interest rates are coming down a little bit. I got gas on the way over here. Gas prices are down, and actually that's kind of a tailwind. By the way, at the gas station, I got chiefed not once but twice by the guy pumping my gas, and I wasn't sure whether to high-five him or whether I should be pissed.
Well, usually you're the chief guy. So just so the folks understand, if Tim doesn't know your name, he's going to pal you, he's going to sport you, but if he's
I mean well.
Well, but if he's aggravated, if he doesn't like you, he might chief you, and you got double chiefed.
Well, I got double chiefed, and my son is Buddy, like, hey, buddy, this and that, and Bud. And so Buddy really means good. The question is if you can squeeze a buddy pal into the same thing. But bottom line is the consumer is squeezing a lot into the shopping cart. We heard from Walmart in their earnings last quarter. I mean, Walmart is now the place where you're not just the lower income consumer, you're actually the consumer. And I heard that 75% of the new, essentially, shopping margin that they have are from households that are earning north of $100,000. I mean, this is no longer the place where you're embarrassed to be seen buying your groceries, guy. Even guys like you who buy vegan and organic food all the time.
Well, it's funny you say embarrassed to be seen. I'm not embarrassed by my choice of Christmas movies. And I'll cry at some of them. For me, I just want you to know, It's a Wonderful Life still takes top billing.
That's Jimmy Stewart, I believe.
You call him Jimmy Stewart.
Well,
yes.
you know,
Jimmy Stewart is your guy.
That's my guy.
And Donna Reed plays his wife. But Lionel Barrymore plays a huge role in that. Now, I don't know if you know or not, but Lionel Barrymore is like Drew Barrymore's great-grandfather. He's a little bit older than Drew.
Well, you know, Drew was in that that movie with
E.T., if you recall.
E.T., where they were, you know,
they
with
got
Princess
on the bikes.
Princess Leia and
well,
Luke.
You say that because I've never seen any of these. Like, people love Star Wars. It's not my jam.
Yeah.
So I goof around and say I love the scene in Star Wars where all the kids were on the bikes and they were flying off into the moon. Obviously, that's not the case. But my question to you is, what's your holiday go-to movie?
And this is the age-old, is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
100%.
Or it is? Yeah. Honestly, maybe it's Die Hard just because, to me, that was the heyday of the 80s, right? I mean, that was, what was the name of the building?
Well, the Nakatomi Building, which is a great pull by me.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. Okay, let's go sort of the more, I don't know, the classic, the cartoonies. Are you a Rudolph guy? Are you a Grinch that stole Christmas guy?
I think, when it comes to a year without a Santa Claus, I think that's one where if we're going claymation guy, I mean, that's probably the place I'm going to go. The Heat Miser, Snow Miser, I think it was a better musical. But I'm a purist at the end of the day. And probably as I reference the land of misfit toys, I use that metaphor only exceeded probably by the barroom scene in Star Wars, often to describe the people I'm hanging out with or, effectively the groups that I'm in.
Well, you mentioned there were some villains in some of these things. You mentioned Heat Miser and Snow Miser, but the Winter Warlock in Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Remember, he was a scary dude.
Spooky. So let's get back to looking towards next year, because the question is the consumer spooked by higher tariffs coming? The fact that inflation, we thought it was under control. I go to the supermarket now, a loaf of bread's $5, and I don't. Not in any language or any North Pole should a loaf of bread be $5. Is the consumer dead, or as we look to 25 here, again, the momentum we've had into this holiday season so far, and it's always made to be a bigger deal or not, the read we have so far on what this means, but it's make or break time for a lot of companies that serve the consumer. Your call.
U.S. consumers never dead. I say it all the time. Never underestimate the U.S. consumers want to spend. They will spend under just about every circumstance. It's where they're spending. And you mentioned earlier the quarter that we heard out of Walmart, a stock that's trading at an all-time high, and you juxtapose that with their historic rival Target, which just had a disastrous quarter, a stock that went down almost 20% in one day, and it's looking at levels we haven't seen in quite some time. So we're seeing the have and the have-nots in retail. The haves are clearly Walmart. The have-nots are clearly Target.
Well, it's fascinating too, because if you look at a Walmart versus an Amazon whose retail business and their e-commerce business is given almost no credit when you look at the valuation of the company, it's really all about AWS and their cloud. But you can make an argument that Walmart trades on a multiple where Amazon is, and Amazon's retail business trades where Walmart is. But it's fascinating because the commitment to e-commerce, the commitment to essentially the digital landscape technology is something that's allowed Walmart to trade at a multiple. And ultimately, to put it in lay people's terms here, Walmart is trading as if they are a tech company. They are trading as if they are NVIDIA right now. In fact, Walmart, as we get into the end of 2024, is up north of 70%, which puts it as one of the best performing stocks in the world, but even better than most of these semiconductor companies.
I know you.
Yep.
I know you're sort of a last-minute shopper type of guy.
I'm deliberate.
You're deliberate.
I'm deliberate.
And you put thought into it as well.
Right.
But sometimes,
tell my wife.
She's watching.
Yeah, sometimes.
But sometimes you don't know what to do. Have you ever bought a gift card for somebody? Yes or no? It's binary, yes or no?
Yes. And I feel like it's better than showing up with the dreaded IOU. But what I used to do, what my brother Mike and I used to do for my brother Chris, is we would often, because we didn't know what to get him, but we knew he would want a gift certificate to the sporting goods store in the bottom floor of the Galleria.
Sure.
You remember it well, Herman's Sporting
100%.
Goods. So what we would do is we would find the goofiest piece of sportwear that we could get for him. And in fact, I remember the year we bought him a fluorescent camouflage hunting suit, which was about $65 back then. And it was it was a very decent gift certificate that ultimately we bought for him. So
you mentioned Herman's Sporting Goods.
Yeah.
Were you a Munsters fan by any chance?
Look, I mean, if you're asking me, was I digging Marilyn Munster? That's.
So funny you say that.
I think that's where you're going with this.
Well, I am and I'm not.
Okay.
Because the wife.
Lily. Yes.
Yes. Yvonne DiCarlo, I believe, which is a great pull.
That's impressive.
You strip her down off that makeup.
Excuse me?
And that was somebody that was getting it done. So I will take Lily Munster, and you'll take the niece Marilyn.
The Munsters made me realize it was time to do homework, man. I did not dig that show.
All right, so here you go. I'll play the game with you since you want to get away from that. Addams Family or Munsters, if you had a would you rather?
Addams Family, just because I feel like Uncle Fester was a guy that,
That
somehow.
cat put a light bulb in his mouth and lit it up. Now, I will tell you, if you think about sort of the spouses in that, I mean, I think it was Tish in the Addams Family.
She spoke French.
And when she spoke French, it did it for her husband.
Good things happen. You know what else happened? I see you've got a bunch of, I've got a bunch of albums on the table that I wanted to talk to you about because, in fact, when we come back, we're going to head into Tim's vinyl vault. There's a couple albums in there that back in the day I used to put them on to set the mood, if you know what I mean. So
not that you needed the mood set.
Well, anyway, when we come back, we're going to go into my vinyl vault and we're going to paint a mosaic of the market in album terms. Hey, we're back, Business Remix with Tim and Guy. Guy, we have an exciting part of the show.
I love this.
And this is
one of my favorite segments.
And it's one of mine too, because this is my record album, and this is Tim's vinyl vault, where I grabbed a hunk of vinyl from my room. And what we do here, folks, is we pick an album somewhere. I'm going to let Guy pick out an album, and then we're going to weave a market mosaic around the different song titles, because rock and roll is prescient. Rock and roll never dies, right? And rock and roll seems to be able to make a call on markets and what's going on. This is really fun. Should we get going?
Absolutely. Rock and roll predicts.
Rock and roll predicts.
And this is your vinyl.
Why don't you give me a number from 1 to 12? I'm going to pick out that album, and then we're gonna dive in. So
eight's always been a lucky number for
8?
me, Tim. So give me number 8.
All right, but before I count 8 albums in, I'm gonna have some fun. Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And Young, by the way. This is
Wow.
This is incredible, and a lot of people don't realize how important Neil Young was to that band. A young Linda Ronstadt and her greatest hits, of which I got to tell you, I got plenty of time for Linda. James Taylor, Sweet Baby James, obviously.
That's Zeppelin 4,
This is Zeppelin 4. Give me a year on this.
Zeppelin 4 was 1972, but that's a guess.
What's fascinating about Zeppelin is, they were not quite as come and go as the Beatles, but their heyday was about 6 years. And anyway, we'll get to that. Aerosmith, Toys in the Attic. Great album. I think Aerosmith's overrated. You heard it.
You know what? Yes, I know, but that is one of the great album covers of all time. So share that with the audience.
Yeah.
That is
what's going on here?
There's a lot going. You got teddy bears. You got a little scary stuff.
Those are toys.
Yeah.
Do you have toys in your attic?
What do you think?
Do you have other things in your attic?
Skeletons in your closet?
That's where I'm going with it, but I'm sure they do. Double Vision. I grew to not really like Foreigner so much, but this was a big album back in the day. Pete Townshend's Empty Glass, number 7. I think is one of the greatest solo albums for a guy that I think is one of the greatest rockers of all time. Pete broke out on this one, and I think it was really one of his best. And here we are. Oh, all right.
Diver Down.
Diver Down, Van Halen. By the way, this is, what album was this for them?
That's their 5th studio album. I want to say 1982. Don't at me if I'm off.
If I could read that, I think 82 is right. So look, the fun part of this game is I'm gonna read you the song titles for the first side of the album. And you're going to begin your market mosaic. I'm going to hand you the album. You're going to read off the song titles for the second 5, the B side, if I may, and off we go.
I'm ready to roll.
Look, markets have had a big year. It's 2004. We're coming to a conclusion. But another great year. It's been a bull market, no matter how you slice it, with a lot of volatility in between. The first song, Where Have All the Good Times Gone, Guy Adami?
So where have all the good times gone for some of the stocks that we've talked about? For example, where have all the good times gone for some of these low-end realtors like a Dollar Tree, a Dollar Gen?
Yeah.
Those stocks were Teflon for a long time, but as we get into the new year, those lower-end retailers are not having a good time. So where have all the good times gone for Dollar Gen, a store that you probably have frequented a number of times?
I love Dollar Gen. Look, it's the Dollar Tree. Handing my kids $5 and saying go crazy makes any father feel good. All right, next song is Little Guitars. And by the way, if Little Guitars is Eddie kind of riffing into something a little more aggressive that then turns into Hang 'em High.
Okay, so Little Guitars. So when I hear that, like, little guitars, a violin, like, play that small violin because nobody cares. A lot of things have also fallen on hard times, but nobody seems to care that a name like Eli Lilly, which was parabolic into the end of the year, that's fallen on hard times, but nobody wants to hear their woes because they were enjoying the whole GLP-1 craze. So little guitars, I'm thinking Eli Lilly.
Little guitars and hang 'em high. And then we have Secrets, which I think is the second to last song, or maybe the last song of that first side, because then we get into, a couple other great ones.
We Have No Secrets, which is a great
That is
Carly
nice.
Simon song.
Oh, I thought you were talking about you and me.
We don't.
Yeah,
you and I have no secrets.
We're open books here.
But secrets in terms of what's Warren Buffett been doing? What's so secretive? Why has he now amassed $325 billion of cash on his balance sheet? What does he know? What is he keeping secret?
Interesting.
From the rest of us?
Interesting. And your last one is Oh Pretty Woman. And this is like there's a lot of places to go with this.
Well,
I mean,
I'm gonna give
there's
you
a lot of pretty ladies on Wall Street,
yes,
but
there are
that's
a lot of pretty
we're probably
ladies.
not supposed to do that.
We can do it now, but you think like boats are named after women a lot of times, and people. The bank that's the prettiest woman out of all of them is J.P. Morgan.
Interesting.
And that stock continues to sort of rise. And, it defies logic, but that's the prettiest woman in the financial bunch, Tim Seymour.
I like it. All right. So we're on to the second half, and I'm going to hand you the album, and you're going to now feed some of this to me because, it's my job to complete the journey here through the market. Via Diver Down.
Okay, this is a hard one for you, but you can do it. Big Bad Bill is Sweet William now.
This is Bill Gates. This is a story of Microsoft. This is a story of look, this was a big bad disappointment for a long time. Microsoft for the last 2 to 3 years, though, has been one of the most, I think, important companies in the world. And I would argue Sweet William in 2025 will probably be more important than NVIDIA. That's right. You heard it here. Sweet William now was Big Bad Bill. Bill Gates, by the way, I mean, not just the foundation. He seems to be doing okay for himself, too. He's living his best life right now.
I like what you did. That's very clever.
Thank you.
Dancing in the street.
Dancing in the street. Look, we've got a new administration. We've got a clean sweep in Washington. And I don't care what side you're on. There's no question that there is some sense that there is a new slate. And I think, look, our country has been very divided on politics. We all know that. But I think the markets were certainly immediately dancing in the street. But as we look towards next year, there are a series of potential dynamics with fiscal stimulus, central banks cutting, that I think will have possibly equities dancing in the street.
All right, I'm going to call a bit of an audible here because this is a song, and when I hear the word, I think of certain things.
Okay.
I think of one thing. The next song is Cathedral.
Cathedral.
Before you start,
Okay.
there's one cathedral in the Bronx, and that, of course, is Yankee Stadium. And as we're sitting here now, teams are vying for free agents and what have you, but let's just face it, Tim. Everybody wants to play in the Bronx. In the cathedral that's known as Yankee Stadium.
Look, free agent, the hot stove is on in baseball. There's an argument, by the way, that when Yankee Stadium was torn down and they moved across the parking lot, it's now not a cathedral, it's a mausoleum, is what I would say. And as a Met fan, where in Citi Field we have a quirky but fun stadium where you're supposed to have a good time, I would make an argument that that's probably more of a baseball cathedral. But let's talk markets here, Guy.
Well, I mean, give me a cathedral.
Well, I think the cathedral is really the church of the Federal Reserve. And I think right now markets are once again, I think the Fed is the most important God out there.
Wow.
Well, look, and again, the 10 Commandments say, believe in one God, don't fight the Fed.
Okay.
Look what I just did there.
People should understand that you do many things. You're in a band. You're on TV shows.
I'm a father.
You're a father. You're a husband.
Yes,
you're a son. You're a brother.
Yeah.
You're also a Sunday school teacher.
Yeah.
So you just dropped the little 10 Commandments on us because that's what you do.
Look, I think there are many people that probably know more of the 10 Commandments. That's going to be another show, and we're going to talk about the market through the context of the 10 Commandments. By the way, thou shalt not steal.
Okay. Happy trails.
Happy trails. Look, happy trails to me is something people say when they're about to go down the black diamonds and they don't really know what's going to happen. In other words, happy trails aren't always happy trails, Guy. And as I think we look to 2025, I know I just talked about the market and people dancing in the streets. I think after two of the greatest years the markets have put together back to back, at least going back to October of 22, maybe one of the greatest markets, bull markets of all time. Happy trails to you. Until we meet again.
Okay, so I happen to know that if you were to be a skier, you're the type of person that would go right to the black diamond because that's how you roll. You're not going greens, you're not going blues, you're going right to the black diamond.
So look, I'm not much of a skier. In other words, I grew up in a family where a couple of my brothers would go skiing over winter break. I would head to the beach. But what I've learned is that I'm actually not a bad snowboarder. But what's even more important about the snowboard is that the gear is kind of cool. So it doesn't, you're comfortable, you kind of look cool out there, and that's really the story. By the way, this story is ending. It's time to get out of the vinyl vault.
No, we do. And what's funny is, you think you remember certain things, and this is one of my favorite albums, but the final song on this album is called The Full Bug. And for the life of me, I don't remember that song, Tim Seymour.
For the full bug, when we come back, we'll try to find the bug. And then we're going to talk about building your portfolio. And folks, I got to tell you, when you start comparing building a portfolio to building a supergroup from some of the best known groups of all times, come on back and watch us do it.
Welcome back to Business Remix. We're going to build a portfolio for 2025 because that's what we do.
It's
going to be diverse. It's going to be interesting. But before we do that, Tim, we're going to get a little creative here because this is something that you and I talk about all the time. I think arguably the best 4 bands of all time in our world, Led Zeppelin, perhaps the greatest band.
Well,
of all
it's
time.
easy. You're leading the witness here. So let's just finish talking about the game.
So Led Zeppelin.
But I love Zeppelin, but I'm not sure they're the greatest.
The Who.
Yes, they would be
That's
my greatest.
your band.
Yeah, they're my band.
The Beatles, which I throw in the mix because you have
You're
to
reluctant.
throw the Beatles.
You're reluctant.
reluctant.
I'm not reluctant. The Beatles have to be there.
And of course, the Rolling Stones.
Right.
Now, if you were to build a 4-person band, having to use one person
Only
for each
one.
band for diversification reasons.
Yes,
because
this sounds like a portfolio.
We both know that if you were to build a perfect band, it already happened in the form of Led Zeppelin.
Right.
But you need a lead singer,
Yeah.
a bass player,
Yeah.
a lead guitar,
Hold on.
and a drummer.
Yeah, you just made this. I mean, because when I think about some of the bands, I think about, in the Beatles, they didn't have a lead singer. They had a bunch of guys that could sing. So if I want to choose a guy, Mick's a lead singer, Page is a lead singer. I know what you're doing here. And by the way, when I think about, again, the portfolio and the metaphor to stocks, ultimately, having 2 guys from the Beatles might be like having Apple and Microsoft. In other words, you can't. It's too much concentration.
Can't do it. Too much concentration.
Too much concentration.
All right, so here we go. John Bonham is the greatest drummer of all time. He's the best available athlete. I'm building my first player with John Bonham of Led Zeppelin, which means now Led Zeppelin is done.
Off the board.
Off the board.
By the way, as a drummer, I love that because the joke that I've heard directed at me, and I've then had to use probably 1,001 times. This is 1,002. Is what do you call the guy standing next to 3 musicians?
The drummer.
The drummer, and that's.
Well, you are a drummer,
Yeah.
so you understand why I would pick a John Bonham.
Absolutely.
Lead singer next. You got to go Roger Daltrey, one of the great front people in the history of rock and roll. So now I've used my person from the band The Who.
Yeah.
Now I need a
Again,
guitarist.
I wouldn't have done either of these.
So
by the
watch
way.
what I'm going to do here. I'm going Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones. He's my lead guitar. I'm left with the bass player.
By the way, I love what you did with Keith Richards because he sings. So it's kind of like drafting Walmart, which is a retailer, but it's also an e-commerce play now. It's a lot of things. Anyway, all right, keep going.
Watch what I do here.
Yeah.
Because now
Yeah.
I'm left with the Beatles. I need a bass player.
Okay.
What better person to sort of finish off your band with the great left-handed bass player in Paul McCartney? That, Tim Seymour, is a super group.
It's a super group, and you're a super guy, and you are a guy, and I'm, my shoes are hard to fill here behind you. I'll say this: Pete Townsend to me is one of the most underrated guys in rock and roll history. He's my pick, and he's obviously a guitarist, but he can also sing. Pete Townsend's my #1 guy.
The Who is off the board.
The Who are off the board.
Okay.
Behind him, I think again, I love the fact that Keith Richards gives me a little bit of everything. And people are saying, hold on, you have 2 guitarists. How are you dealing with this? And this may start to become a bit problematic. But next, I've obviously got to go to a place that I'm not terribly thrilled about, but you're going to be surprised. Ringo. Ringo's my drummer.
Okay, stop the presses right there. I mean,
Look,
now you're embarrassing yourself.
Look, no, but again, much in the way we're thinking about the portfolio for 2025, I think there's a new school of thought about Ringo. After watching that Get Back video, we all, music flows out of McCartney like water.
Like water.
But Ringo is a talented musician, and so now I'm left with Zeppelin. And at this point, I need a bass player.
Yes, the great John Paul Jones.
John Paul Jones, and I don't think he gets enough credit. And therefore, my supergroup is a group for tomorrow, like my portfolio. And I think about companies that don't get a lot of credit. And I'm going to start building right now.
All right, before you build out,
all right.
I like what you did with John Paul Jones. Now, I want to play a different game, and then we're going to get into some stocks here for the 2025
it's a lot
portfolio.
Of games. All right.
If you looked at the Beatles and had to rank them as musicians, talk to me, the 4 members of the Beatles.
I know where you're going with this because you're going to try to point out how underrated that George Harrison was, but everybody hated him. He was kind of a whiny dude, right? And I know how. I'll let you talk about Lennon because I think you've got a strong opinion.
Very strong opinion.
McCartney is as much as I love Pete Townsend, McCartney to me is the consummate musician of our lifetime. And again, whether it was pop songs, whether it was rock and roll, whether his ability to really assimilate a lot of different types of music and musicians, I love McCartney. He's the greatest.
So this is the way I would rank the Beatles if I had to do so, which we're doing right here.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney, number 1. A couple years ago, I would have gone Harrison, but I watched what you watched, and I realized the genius that is Paul McCartney. McCartney, Harrison, Lennon, Ringo. Ringo, by the way, a distant fourth. When it comes to Led Zeppelin, this is where I get creative.
Okay.
Bonham is number 1.
Yep.
You would think Jimmy Page is 2.
For most people.
It's not.
He hasn't gotten...
John Paul Jones is a genius, a musical genius.
Sounds
Jimmy
like
Page,
you like my band.
Number 3, and then Robert Plant, who I love, by the way, he's pulling up the rear.
Yeah.
Build me a portfolio for 2025. Be diverse like the band that you built.
Well, again, diversification is certainly portfolio management 101. But again, it's with an eye on what sectors I think will be working. And I think about the market that we had in 24. It's not the market. And we've already started to see this broadening. We call about this rotation guy. In other words, I think the Mag 7 stocks will be funding vehicles for more real economy stocks. But I'm going to start in the banking sector because I think money center banks are going to continue to rally. There's a lot of momentum around not only deregulation, there's a lot of consensus that we're going to see M&A dynamics. We're going to see actually the market open up. Yield curve is steeper. I'm going to pick the cheapest money center bank who I think has the longest...
Hold on. Citibank.
There you go. Well,
keep going. I'm in your head,
yeah, well,
but please.
That wasn't that difficult. Then I'm going to go, actually, this is going to be a bit of a surprise because while I don't know that this company belongs in supergroup status, there was a time, it certainly, probably at the time of the Beatles, Ford Motor Company was one of the most renowned and iconic American companies and brands. I think Ford will emerge in 25. And again, I'm talking about performance. I'm talking about a company that really underperformed its other Detroit peer in GM. It's a company that does have EV progress, but more than anything, it's been an underperformer at a time. The focus will be on Detroit. The focus coming out of Washington will be support these companies. And I think that's very important. The third would be I need to have the consumer in there. I need to have a core consumer play. And I think it's Target. I know this sounds crazy. And again, we talked about how Target has been such an underperformer relative to Walmart. I like what they're doing. Finally, I need technology. And you know what? It's going to surprise you. It probably really is the Beatles of the market. It's Apple. And Apple was not the sexy stock to own the last 2 years. It's dramatically underperformed. I think that refresh cycle around Apple Intelligence, and if you're listening, folks, to us on the radio or in your podcast or on Sirius or iHeart or all these wonderful places, I've got the air quotes out. The air quotes out are saying it's Apple's time. That refresh cycle around Apple Intelligence is going to be powerful.
All right, I'm going to pull the guns out here. I'm going to build you my portfolio. I'm going to go financials first.
All right.
But I'm going to give you a Goldman Sachs, which, if you think about Goldman Sachs, probably the best investment bank of our lifetime.
Yeah, they are. They are.
You think about
smartest guys in the room.
Smartest guys and gals in the room. Think about the stewardship of David Solomon.
DJ Sol.
Think about the environment that they're going to find themselves in 25. It's had a great run. I think it's going to continue. That's my number one
I like your call there. It's had a big move. I think, again, what I was trying to do is find underperformers that I think could outperform.
You did
Goldman's
that.
kick butt.
You did that in the form of
Goldman's
Ford
kick
Motor
butt,
Company.
yeah.
But I'm not going down that route.
Okay,
Now
all
I'm
right.
going technology.
Okay.
You're not going to know where I'm going. But I'm going to throw you old school technology
Okay.
here.
IBM.
And that,
Am I in your
that
head?
comes in the form of International Business
Yeah,
Machines,
yeah.
IBM. You think about what they've done. Listen, they lost their way for a long time. They made an acquisition a few years ago, Red Hat,
Yep.
and they're starting to integrate it very well. And by the way, that's this sort of underground AI play and cloud play. So IBM, which has been a stealth mover, I think will continue to do so.
All right.
What I did there?
I got Goldman. I got who's your second pick?
IBM. We just talked about it. You knew it, and then you forgot it.
Is that only your second?
That's my second
I'm sorry.
pick.
Yeah, it's getting late.
Well, it is. My
Yeah,
third pick,
getting
I'm
late
going to
early.
have to go retail, but I'm going to sort of twist it a little bit and give you MasterCard. Because when people spend now, they spend with the plastic. Transactions. They process transactions lower left in terms of the stock to the upper right.
They're always going to be there. Payments. And who's less?
That trend will continue.
Yep.
And I'm going to get a little sort of, I don't know, I'm going to have a little bit of fun. Can I have a little bit of fun with
I hope
the
so.
last
I hope
one?
so. While we have a couple seconds left.
Well, I'm going to throw Netflix your way.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, come on.
Nope.
You know what? It's Netflix world, and everybody else is living in it. They continue to operate, and they continue to perform in a way that no other company in media has been able to do. Netflix is my
that Tyson
fourth.
Paul fight was arguably the event of 24. I think Netflix has something up their sleeve in 25. I know folks at home, you've got something up your sleeve in 25. We're going to send you there, but build your own portfolio. And it's time for us to go, Guy. It's Business Remix. I'm Tim.
I'm Guy. This was a lot of fun. We'll be back soon.
See you.